The morning was cold, and a heavy mist clung to the mountains surrounding Bergen, the kind that made the air thick, turning every breath into a visible cloud. It was November 29th, 1970. A father and his two daughters, out for a hike in the Isdalen Valley, picked their way through the damp undergrowth, the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs, the only interruption in the vast, eerie silence. The older daughter was the first to see it, something unnatural in the landscape. A blackened form, nestled between the rocks, charred and motionless. The father, drawn by his daughter's gasp, stepped forward and felt his stomach tighten. It was a woman who had been burned so severely that her skin had fused with the fabric of her clothing. The sickening scent of scorched flesh still lingered in the damp mountain air. Nearby, objects were scattered: an empty bottle of liquor, sleeping pills, and peculiar items that made no sense. A silver spoon with an engraved design, melted plastic, and pieces of paper with a strange code scribbled onto them. But there was no identification, no passport, no wallet, no way to tell who she was. The police arrived quickly, their boots crunching over frostbitten grass as they surveyed the grim scene. Investigators noted the absence of a fire site. If she had been set alight, where was the source? There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no weapon. Yet something about it felt calculated, staged. The autopsy revealed an even deeper mystery. The woman had consumed over 50 sleeping pills. Her lungs held no signs of smoke inhalation, meaning she had been burned after she died. Most curiously, her fingerprints had been completely sanded off. Whoever she was, someone wanted to erase her. Detectives scoured hotels and passenger lists, looking for an answer. They found one, or at least part of one. The woman had checked into several hotels around Bergen in the weeks prior to her death, always under different names: Claudia Tielt, Vera Schlosseneck, Alexia Zarna Merches. The names were as fabricated as her past. No records matched them, and each time she checked in, she used a different alias, spoke in multiple languages, and avoided unnecessary contact with anyone. Hotel staff remembered her as poised, elegant, yet distant. Some said she had an air of secrecy, like she was always looking over her shoulder. One chambermaid recalled a strange detail. The woman had asked for breakfast to be brought to her room, but when the tray was retrieved, the food was untouched, as if she had never really been there, as if she had vanished. The investigation took a sharp turn when detectives discovered 2 suitcases at the Bergen train station, traced back to the woman. Inside, they found an array of wigs, sunglasses, elegant clothing, an entire wardrobe designed to help someone disappear into any setting. The labels on the clothing had been meticulously cut away. There were no fingerprints on anything. However, one clue stood out: a coded note, a series of letters and numbers that initially made no sense. Cryptographers worked tirelessly to decode the message. It turned out to be a record of her movements, listing dates and locations: Bergen, Stavanger, Trondheim. Each name was tied to a false identity. It painted a picture of a woman on the run. But from what? Or from whom? Witnesses began to come forward, offering glimpses of her last days. A fisherman recalled seeing her at the docks, speaking to a man in a dark coat. Their conversation had been hushed, intense. A hotel clerk remembered the odd, pungent smell that lingered after she checked out, like a chemical residue. A local woman swore she had seen the Isdal Woman boarding a small boat at night, her silhouette disappearing into the misty waters, never to return. Theories swirled like the cold Norwegian wind. Was she a spy, slipping through Europe under forged identities? Her death the result of a mission gone wrong? Had she been an informant, silenced before she could speak? Or was she a fugitive, running from shadows only she could see? There was one final, unsettling clue. A forensic expert examined her jaw and found traces of dental work that were unusual for Norway. The technique used in her fillings was common in Eastern Europe, possibly Russia. Could she have been connected to the Soviet Union? Was she an intelligence agent, a Cold War operative whose cover had finally been blown? A retired intelligence officer later claimed that the Isdal Woman matched the profile of covert operatives who were trained to evade detection. Her multiple identities, her ability to switch between languages, her secretive nature, it all pointed to something much larger than a lone woman wandering through Norway. But without concrete proof, the mystery remained just that, a mystery. Despite extensive efforts, her case grew colder. The newspapers called her the Isdal Woman, turning her into a ghost story whispered through the streets of Bergen. But she wasn't a ghost, she was real. And someone, somewhere, knew who she was. Years passed, and the case faded into the archives. But it never truly disappeared. In the age of digital forensics and DNA analysis, new attempts were made to uncover her identity. Scientists extracted genetic material from her remains, hoping to trace her lineage. Could modern technology finally answer the questions that had haunted investigators for decades? To this day, her identity remains a riddle wrapped in a cipher, an enigma that refuses to be solved. The Isdal Woman was more than just a body in the mountains. She was a story without an ending, a question that lingers in the dark corners of history, waiting for someone to unlock its truth. Until then, she remains a specter of secrecy, forever lost in the cold embrace of the Norwegian wilderness.